The good news. For you to appreciate the good news, I wish to share with you the background to this story, as I feel I need more than a few minutes to do the story justice. The news is that of our new project in the Philippines, which is to supply a number of theological books to the Prisons of Christ organisation of the Philippines, known by the acronym POCOP, and to pastors of Baguio Christ-centred churches. Background to the story. In 1993, whilst working at Fareham College, the ITN News broadcast reported that a British travel agent from Eastbourne had been arrested in the Philippines and in due course sentenced to prison for 16 years. I was shocked at this news, as this man was my brother, Michael John Clark, just 2 years older than me. We had grown up together, but when I became a Christian at the age of 21, our lives drifted apart. He knew I'd become a Christian and had attended a meeting at the church where I was a member of, and he heard my testimony of becoming a Christian. This was in 1983, but his life was unaffected by the account of my conversion. During that time, I tried various ways of teaching and preaching the gospel to many of my former friends and whoever I could. My brother and I communicated by letter, and he informed me that he had married a Filipino, but sadly his wife died of a blood disorder. For the next few years I learned of his ill health. This was evident from his letters. He was losing weight, losing his teeth, and was in a bad way, and was suicidal, but feared death, as he said he would be going to hell if he died. The following year, in 1998, I could tell from his letters that he was very much better, and he told me through various means, and reading C.S. Lewis's book, Mere Christianity, he believed that Jesus was the Christ, the Son of the living God, and was being helped by other inmates, who too had become Christians, in the prison. It was then I wrote, instructing him to be baptised as a Christian, if need be, by another Christian inmate to do it, and continue in the things of God. New Bilibid Prison is the national penitentiary in the Philippines and housed over 25,000 inmates in 3 compounds, the maximum, medium and minimum compound and penal farms. It is the largest prison in Asia's Far East. It was a former prisoner of war camp of the Japanese during the Second World War. The maximum compound housed 13,500 inmates in an area of 12 hectares and was where my brother was. Within the maximum compound is death row, where 1,200 inmates were scheduled to be executed by lethal injection. It was on the news of my brother's baptism that my Christian friend Gordon Smith and I decided to go on a mission of help to the Philippines to help my brother and celebrate the fact of him becoming a Christian. There were things that we could do in the Philippines to secure his early release. We called our mission Trojan Horse. Michael worked with several other prison inmates who too had become Christians and had learned the gospel truths within New Bilibid Prison Theological Institute, MBPTI, where Lucas P. Dangan was the head pastor, who too was a former inmate, and William Pollock and Andy Dolan, all of whom were convicted criminals with long prison sentences, but upon becoming Christians, studied hard and obtained theological degrees and were leaders and teachers of theology in the prison, along with a Korean Presbyterian missionary, Joseph Kim. When they heard of our intended visit, it was arranged for us to speak and preach to various Christian groups within the prison, not only in New Bilibid Prison, but other prisons such as Angeles City and Barreto District Jails, at which time we were accompanied by Monica Kokorani, a Baptist pastor who worked as a pastor within New Bilibid Prison and gave us much help. On our first visit, I went with Gordon Smith in October 2001. We were overwhelmed by the Christian groups and work within the prison. We preached to hundreds of prison inmates, including those on death row, over a period of 5 weeks, and I invited 100 men who had become Christians to put their testimonies in writing, and during the next year 66 testimonies were submitted in writing. 22 of which were inmates on death row. During the next year, Lucas Dangatton, the senior pastor of the Theological Institute, posted and emailed these testimonies back and forth to us in the UK. We then compiled them and published them in our book, Trojan Warriors, and returned to the Philippines in October 2002 to distribute the books to each inmate that had written their testimony. We were persuaded that each inmate, with a copy of the book, could use this on their release from prison as a means of teaching the gospel to their families and friends, pointing out that they had 66 other witnesses as to the fact of their message of salvation by the Lord Jesus Christ. It was as though we, as fishermen, had worked all night in England and caught nothing, but now the gospel net was being cast the other side of the world. We were astonished at the draught of fishes that were taken. William Pollock was the first of these inmates, our first Trojan warrior, to be released from prison in August 2002 and returned to his own city with a commission to preach and teach the gospel to his own family, friends and people in Baguio City. He had been in prison for 14 years and worked very hard in spite of him having only one leg. He did this, and after obtaining the permissions from the authorities to preach in the jails, he worked regularly instructing inmates with the truths of the gospel. In December of the year 2002, I visited these jails with William Pollock and baptised over 20 inmates in Baguio City and Benguet district jails who had confessed their faith in the Lord Jesus Christ through the preaching and teaching of William Pollock. William's story is told in his book, called From Darkness into His Marvellous Light, a book we recently published and is now given freely to prison inmates and is circulating in 4 city and district jails. This tells of his testimony from crime to Christ and how he formed the first church in the city of Baguio, and of their jail ministries, including the establishment of a theological institute teaching the Reformed faith in Baguio, and of his studying for a higher degree. This is an institute to give tuition to trained ministers who cannot afford expensive tuition fees, and to the formation of several churches in the northern Philippines during this past 20 years and since. We have worked together during this time, giving support where I could and supplied printed materials with some financial help. William and Lucas have continued their work of preaching and teaching the gospel, working in New Bedford Prison and other prisons, and many of those inmates who were once in prison have been released and are dispersed throughout the Philippines, and some have gone overseas. They are in the Free Society and able to testify of this gospel work. It was 10 years ago, due to the continued gospel work, they formed an organisation for ex-prisoners who had become Christians whilst in prison, of which William Pollock is the national chairman. The group is known as, by the acronym, POCOP, which means Prisoners of Christ Organisation Philippines. Many from New Bedford Prison who are now in the Free Society and different parts of the Philippines, some of which had written their testimonies in our book, Trojan Warriors. I visited and addressed this assembly last year and was appointed an honorary member and attended their 8th assembly in 2022 and also the 20th anniversary of Baguio Christ-centred churches. It is from this group that a request has been made to teach the doctrines of grace according to the Reformed faith. This is our new project. Remember, whilst in prison, William graduated with a theological degree and was a teacher in the Theological Institute organised by Lucas Dangatton. They were full well aware of the errors of teaching and beliefs amongst the religious, not only in the prison but also in the Free Society, and now both he and Lucas wish to extend their work that Lucas had begun. They wish to distribute theologically sound literature, and they have been asked by former inmates who are now in the Free Society but scattered to teach them the doctrines of grace. To help in this project, I have prepared for print and William has arranged for the printing in the Philippines of a 1-volume book entitled Systematic Theology by Louis Berkhof, a book that treats the doctrines of grace according to the Reformed faith, and 60 copies are to be given freely to those pastors in Baguio and Benguet churches and to members of the POCOP group to assist in their ongoing education. The first batch of books was delivered on the 23rd of August 2003. This is the basic textbook used in Baguio and Jerul Theological Institutes. They are to be given freely in order to assist in the teaching of the doctrines of grace to members of POCOP and ministers of Baguio Christ-centered churches. I've also sent the print-ready files to Pastor Anil Anwar of Christ Church in Rahim Yar Khan, Pakistan, as they wish to form a theological institute in Pakistan. I support this work of William Pollock and Lucas Dangattan, and I'm seeking to fund this venture, bearing in mind the poverty in this country is very great. At first, we printed the 500-page text in 2 volumes, but to reduce printing costs, made a 1-volume edition, which has now been printed and is in circulation. You will remember that I had hoped to visit the Philippines earlier this year on their POCOP 9th Assembly, and also the 21st anniversary of Baguio Christ-centered churches, but I was too ill to travel. It is my desire to invite William and Lucas to the UK and somehow fund their trip to introduce them to Christian work here in the UK. This will be a great help to them and an inspiration to others. This is one of my wishes and a vision yet to be realised. These are the 12 churches established in the northern Philippines by William Ola Pollock since 2001.